All right. All right there. So that kind of gives us a baseline, as I said, for what we're going to be discussing today. And I like that video because Dr. Bly talks about uh, the way we process um, traumatic events in our lives has a lot to do with, you know, our perceptions and developing triggers. One of the things that I know for me, and there's a and there's types of trauma. I mean, she talked about the little girl in the swimming pool. We have significant life altering events such as physical or sexual abuse, uh, violent attacks, natural disasters. Things that happen um, to our communities can be a trauma, a traumatic event. And they have little traumas, smaller everyday events, things like emotional distress, relationship difficulty, stress at work or school, or just some minor incidents. I can, I think you guys kind of see with me with Wayne. Sometimes it can be stressful dealing with a special needs child. That can trigger some responses in me, and I just have to be able to know how to work through those. See, one of the things that I found uh, is, and I'll send this out. I think Joseph sent it. I sent it to you, the worksheet, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But one of the things that we need to do is learn how to regulate our emotional regulation, I should say. And that's the ability to manage one's emotional state in a healthy way, especially when faced with distressing situations. As parents, this is what really gets me about triggers. We don't realize sometimes the way that we react to our kids will make them develop, as the doctor was just saying, negative responses to uh, to traumatic events that they've had in their lives. Like you talked about the little girl with the water. I know people today that are afraid of water, and sometimes I think about that. Why are they afraid of the water? What was it in their childhood that caused them to do that? I get people that don't want to do anything that is, like I was saying before, when you become vulnerable, you want to accept life and experience life, then you're able to reach out and do things that are uh, interesting and expand your horizons. But when we have traumatic events and they limit us because of the way we process that event, that trigger. For me, go back to me again on my addiction. One of the things that was payday. Oh man, I got paid. It was like, you know, something just went off in my brain. I had to go out and do this. I had to uh, uh, go pick up my dope, and I had to go do this and do that. And I was trying to understand why I developed that particular uh, trigger. And I got to the point where I decided on payday, I wouldn't pick up a check. I'd have the check, once I got into recovery, I'd put the check automatically into the bank. You know, that way I didn't see the money. I had to find a way to process this trigger, recognize this trigger, and find a way to work around it. And that's one of the things we talk about, emotional regulation. You got to learn how to, we'll find things in our lives, especially from our parents, that will trigger responses. One thing that happened to me, my dad, and I'm glad we resolved this before he passed, he used to call us stupid. I hate that word today. I do. I hate for anybody to call somebody stupid because it triggers a response in me. But what I did was see all triggers and all trauma. The way we respond to that doesn't have to be negative. It can be there can be a positive response because my dad didn't know by default what he did for me was he made me want to go into being the smartest person in the room, obsessive in education. I gotta get into that. I gotta do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. He made me do that because I was trying to impress him. But that also became an obsession, and that got a little bit overboard as well. So again, emotional regulation comes in, knowing that why I'm obsessed in this area, and just being able to regulate it and understand that this can be a positive, but it can also be a negative. So we need to understand that there are techniques that include mindfulness, self-soothing. I think that all of you who were there with Dr. Cooper when we did, and Joseph and I, when we did the Overcoming Obstacles workshop, right at the end of the workshop, because we went through a lot of different information, a lot of stressful information, we went through a lot of stuff that were thrown at everybody in that workshop. And right at the end, she had us do this calming exercise. And we all need to be able to sometimes there's a song that says you got to encourage yourself. We need to be able to understand how to regulate and how to bring ourselves down. With my son, there's a sign, we do this, and he knows, oh, calm down, calm down. When I see Wayne getting overstimulated, I don't even have to be near him. I can be, but as long as he can see me, I can go like this, and he knows the techniques for him. It's deep breathing. He goes into it. He knows what to do. Those exercises we all need, because we get into these situations in life sometimes where we want to react, and unfortunately, we react emotionally. We come out of our emotions, and that is one of the most destructive things that we can do, because what happens is emotions change. They don't stay the same. So what you've done by reacting, emotionally, is you maybe have damaged a relationship, may have hurt somebody's feelings unnecessarily. So when we learn to regulate our emotions, we step back from the situation and realize, okay, why am I feeling like this? Because sometimes, we walk into these situations and they do trigger a emotional response. Why am I feeling this way? What is it that is in me that makes me respond to this particular situation? And see, that's the key. Identifying the situation, the trauma or the event, and where it comes from, the root of that. That's where this self-analysis comes in, where we have to understand that, yeah, this might be something that my parents instilled in me that wasn't processed at that time. One of the things that I go back to in my life was when I was 13 years old when my parents divorced. But I remember when my father left the house, that night I went to the basement and cried, and I was just so emotional. And you talk about last week, I know it's kind of going back on the stuff, but we're talking about abandonment issues. Well, that stuck with me for a long time. I blame my mom. Whenever I got into situations, where they were stressful, I would think about that. My dad's not here. My dad's not here. I need my dad. And that I held on to that for a long time in life. But I got to realize that, guess what? My mother and father, they were adults. They had to do what was best for them at that particular time. Because once you become a parent, you understand that, what, in your relationship, you want to try and do things that are positive for your children. But sometimes you and your spouse gonna bump heads. It just happens. It just happens. So I need to be able to talk to my daughter and my son about that situation so that they can process it and understand that, hey, look, mom and daddy are not gonna get divorced, but we are adults, we do disagree, you will have disagreements in your life, and help them understand that in stressful situations, in conflict, you don't have to react negatively. You can process these things in a healthy manner so that you can move on in life. You don't become stagnant because of this particular situation. Because a lot of us, I know that in the world of addiction, one of the things that we talk about is the chronological age and I think it's the biological age. We look at what happens when you start to use illicit substances. Your emotional state stagnates. It stops right there. You're not processing things in a healthy manner. Or what you're doing now is you're using the drug to try and push down those feelings. What does that do? It means that I don't process things. I could be 40 years old, but I started using when I was 20, and I still process things as a 20-year-old. And that happens to us in trauma. Trauma can stagnate you, it can stop you from growing if you don't process it properly. What it'll trigger in you, it'll trigger that response that you felt at that time. I mean, it can take you back to being, like for me, instance, I talked about that 13-year-old boy. Well, that 13-year-old boy used to pop in me all the time when I get in stressful situations because I had not dealt with that issue in a healthy way. And that's what happens to us. We respond based on where that traumatic event happened if we haven't processed it properly. So we need to understand that. That's why I gave the worksheet. We'll get to the worksheet in a minute, but that's one of the things I want you to take a look at is we all have them. I mean, I still have them, and but now I recognize them quicker than I used to. I'm able to process them a lot faster. But we all have them, and we need to recognize them to if we want to be as productive as we possibly can in our lives. Now,